The first time my father called me the broke one, I was 16 years old and standing in our garage with grease on my hands. The second time, I was 23 and carrying everything I owned in 2 boxes. But the last time he said it, he was sitting at the head of the Thanksgiving table, cutting into a turkey he had not paid for, laughing in front of the whole family, as if my life were the evening's entertainment. "Move the gravy away from Daniel," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "The broke one might try to take it home." The table went quiet for half a second. Then my older brother Ryan laughed. My aunt gave a nervous smile. My mother looked down at her plate, and my father, Thomas Reed, leaned back in his chair, with the satisfied expression of a man who believed he had reminded everyone where they stood. I did not answer. That silence bothered him more than any comeback could have. He tapped his fork against the plate. "What, no joke? No speech about how money isn't everything?" I looked at him across the candles. He was 62, broad-shouldered, silver-haired, and still wearing the expensive watch he had bought when Reed & Sons Construction landed its biggest city contract. He loved that watch, because it told people exactly what he wanted them to believe. That he had won, that he had built everything, that no one in the room could challenge him. "I'm just hungry," I said. Ryan smirked. "Careful, Dad. He might ask you to pay for his gas home." Another laugh moved around the table, weaker this time. I had arrived in an 8-year-old dark blue sedan with a small dent above the rear wheel. Ryan had arrived in a new black SUV that cost more than some houses in our old neighborhood. My father had walked outside when he heard Ryan's engine and greeted him with both arms open. When I pulled in 10 minutes later, he looked at my car and asked if the rental company had run out of decent vehicles. He had no idea the sedan belonged to me by choice. He had no idea I owned the building where Ryan's company rented its office. He had no idea the turkey on his table had been bought with a credit card connected to an account that would be frozen by Monday, unless someone made a decision. Most of all, he had no idea that before dessert, a woman he had begged to attend Thanksgiving dinner would walk through the front door, take one look at me, and call me boss. But I am getting ahead of myself. To understand why that moment mattered, you have to understand my father. Thomas Reed did not simply prefer success. He worshipped it. Not real success, not the kind built quietly through patience, discipline, and sleepless nights. He worshipped the visible kind. Cars, watches, houses with more rooms than people. Restaurant bills placed face up so everyone could see the total. When Ryan and I were children, Dad turned everything into a contest. Who ran faster? Who earned better grades? Who got more attention from teachers? Ryan was 3 years older, louder, stronger, and naturally charming. He knew how to give Dad exactly what he wanted. If Dad said the sky was green, Ryan would explain why green was the best color. If I said the sky was blue, Dad called me difficult. At family gatherings, he introduced Ryan as my future partner. He introduced me as the quiet one. Then, when I got older, the strange one. And eventually, the broke one. My mother, Linda, tried to soften him when she could. She would wait until he left the room, touch my shoulder, and whisper, "He doesn't mean it." But he always meant it. The first serious break between us happened when I was 19. I had been accepted into a state university with a partial scholarship. I wanted to study accounting and software systems because I had become fascinated by the way businesses survived or failed. Numbers did not lie the way people did. A balance sheet did not pretend to love you while quietly keeping score. Dad wanted me to skip college and work full-time at Reed & Sons. "You can learn everything you need from me," he said. I asked what position I would have. He said, "Warehouse assistant." Ryan, who had barely passed 2 business classes, had already been given the title of vice president. I told Dad I was going to college. He stared at me for a long time, then said, "Fine, but don't come asking me for money when your little computer dream fails." I did not. Not once. I worked nights at a grocery store, weekends at a tire shop, and early mornings in the campus mailroom. I ate cheap noodles until I could not smell the seasoning without feeling tired. I slept in short pieces. I learned to study while standing on buses. I learned how to smile when classmates talked about spring break trips I could not afford. And every Thanksgiving, I came home. Every Thanksgiving, Dad asked how much money I was making. Every Thanksgiving, I gave him a simple answer: enough. That word made him angry because it gave him nothing to compare. Ryan graduated into a corner office at Reed & Sons. Dad bought him a truck, then a condo, then half the furniture in the condo. When I graduated, Dad shook my hand and asked if I had finally grown out of my calculator phase. I had not. In fact, that phase was about to change my life. It started with a mistake I found while working as a junior analyst at a small regional bank called Harbor County Trust. A construction company had applied for a loan. On paper, it looked strong. Good revenue, good contracts, valuable equipment. But the cash flow did not match. Payments were late. Project costs were hidden under separate companies, and someone had moved debt between accounts to make the business look healthier than it was. I stayed late for 3 nights, checking every line. Then I walked into my manager's office and told her the loan would fail. She looked at me over her glasses. The owner is one of our biggest clients. I know. He has never missed a payment. He will. She did not like my answer, but she checked my work. The loan was denied. 4 months later, the company collapsed. That was the first time someone important looked at me and saw more than the broke one. My manager's name was Elena Carter. She was 41 then, calm under pressure, sharp without being cruel, and almost impossible to impress. After the construction company failed, she called me into her office and closed the door. "You did not just see bad numbers," she said. "You saw the story behind them." I did not know what to say. She slid a new file toward me. "Do it again." That became my real education. For the next 3 years, Elena gave me the cases no one wanted. Family businesses hiding losses, restaurants growing too fast, small factories with good products and terrible management, farmers hit by bad seasons, stores that looked dead but owned valuable land. I learned that money was not just money. It was fear, pride, hope, and sometimes revenge wearing a suit. I also learned that banks often failed people in 2 ways. They gave easy money to confident liars, and they refused fair chances to careful people who did not know how to speak the language of power. So I started building a tool. At first, it was a simple program on an old laptop. It organized business records, spotted hidden patterns, and measured risk, using more than credit scores. It could not predict the future, but it could ask better questions. Elena saw it one night, when she found me in the office after midnight. "What is that?" she asked. "A better way to listen to numbers." She stood behind me for 20 minutes without speaking. Then she said, "Do not show this to anyone yet." That advice saved me. I kept working. I added features. I tested it on old cases. Elena introduced me to a retired bank director named Samuel Hart, who became my first investor after I spent 2 hours telling him why his assumptions were wrong. He laughed and wrote a check. "Either you are a genius," he said, "or you are too stubborn to fail." It turned out I was mostly stubborn. The company started in a rented room above a laundromat. We called it North Star Risk Solutions because I wanted the name to sound steady, not flashy. There were 4 of us in the beginning: me, a software engineer named Priya, a former loan officer named Marcus, and Elena, who joined a year later after the bank ignored her warnings and promoted the chairman's nephew over her. We worked like people running from a fire. We built software for community banks. Then we helped those banks review failing loans. Then we created a fund to buy troubled business debt, repair the companies when possible, and sell only when the business could stand on its own. We made mistakes, painful ones. Our first major client left without paying. Our second investor tried to take control. One of our servers failed during a presentation. I once gave a speech to a room of 20 bank executives and realized halfway through that my shirt was inside out under my jacket. But we survived. North Star grew. Quietly. That was the important part. I never put my face on the website. I never gave interviews unless my name could be removed. Elena became the public leader because she was better at it, and because I did not want attention. I wanted control over my time, not strangers searching my life. By the time I was 32, North Star had offices in 6 states, held investments in more than 40 small businesses, and owned a majority share of Harbor County Trust, the same bank where I had started. Elena became the bank's president. I became chairman of the holding company that owned it. To the employees, I was Mr. Reed or Daniel. To a small group of executives, I was the founder. To Elena, especially when she wanted to make me uncomfortable in public, I was boss. My family knew none of this. Part of that was my choice. Part of it was their lack of interest. Whenever my mother called, she asked if I was eating enough and whether I was seeing anyone. Whenever Dad called, which was rare, he asked if I had found a real job. Ryan once messaged me to ask if I could fix his laptop because, in his words, I was still into computer stuff. I fixed it. Then I noticed a spreadsheet on his desktop. I did not open it, not then, but the file name stayed in my mind. Bridge loan schedule, private. 3 weeks later, North Star's system flagged Reed & Sons Construction. At first, I thought it was a coincidence. The company had accounts across several banks. But then a senior analyst brought me a summary. Family connection? She asked carefully. Yes. Should we assign someone else? I looked at the report. Reed & Sons had strong revenue, but almost no free cash. The company had borrowed against equipment, future payments, and 2 properties. Several projects were behind schedule. One client was refusing to pay because of disputed work. Another contract required the company to cover rising material costs that Dad had not planned for. Then there was a newer company called R&R Development, owned by Ryan. Reed & Sons had transferred nearly $2 million to it over 18 months. The payments were labeled as consulting, equipment rental, and project management. R&R owned no equipment. Its listed office was inside a building North Star had recently purchased through a separate real estate group. The rent had not been paid in 4 months. I felt something cold settle in my chest. I asked the analyst for the full file. The deeper we looked, the worse it became. Ryan had used money from Reed & Sons to support luxury development projects that were losing money. Dad had signed personal guarantees. My parents' home was listed as security on one loan. So was the construction yard my grandfather had bought 40 years earlier. My mother did not know. I was almost sure of that. I could have stepped in immediately. I could have called Dad and warned him. I could have revealed who I was and demanded answers. But I had spent my whole life learning the cost of speaking before people were ready to listen. So I did something else. I watched, and I waited for the truth to come to me. The invitation to Thanksgiving arrived as a text from my mother. Please come this year. Your father has been difficult. Ryan says the business is doing great, but I am worried. I just want one peaceful dinner. I read it twice. Then I called her. What are you worried about? She lowered her voice. Your father has not been sleeping. He takes calls outside. Ryan comes over late. They stop talking when I enter the room. Has Dad asked you to sign anything? There was a pause. Why would you ask that? Has he? He said the bank needed updated family records. Just routine paperwork. My hand tightened around the phone. Did you sign? No. I told him I wanted to read it. He got angry. Do not sign anything, I said. Not until I see it. She gave a small, nervous laugh. Since when did you become a lawyer? I'm not. Just promise me. She promised. That call changed the plan. Until then, Reed & Sons had been a business problem. Now it was my mother's home, her retirement, her future. Dad and Ryan had brought her into a storm without telling her the sky was dark. I asked Elena to handle the bank side personally. Harbor County Trust held the largest loan connected to Reed & Sons. The loan was technically current, but only because Ryan had been moving money between accounts. A major payment was due the Monday after Thanksgiving. They could not make it. We need to treat this like any other case, Elena said. We will. Can you? I looked at the wall of my office. No family pictures, no awards, just a framed copy of the first dollar North Star earned, and a small photo of my grandfather standing in front of the original Reed & Sons truck. I can treat the business fairly, I said. I am not sure I can treat the people gently. Elena nodded. Fair is required. Gentle is optional. Dad called me 2 days before Thanksgiving. I knew he wanted something the moment I heard his voice. Daniel, how are things? Fine. You still working at that bank company? That bank company, I repeated. You know what I mean. Numbers, software, whatever. Yes. He cleared his throat. We're having some people over Thursday. Important people. Try to dress properly. I almost smiled. Who is coming? Family. And Elena Carter from Harbor County Trust. I leaned back in my chair. He continued. She's the bank president. Ryan and I are discussing a major expansion. She may approve a new credit line. I looked at Elena through the glass wall outside my office. She was standing beside Marcus, reviewing a document. Did she say she would approve it? She said she would come to dinner. That was not an answer. Dad had invited Elena because he believed a warm meal, a good bottle of wine, and Ryan's smile could change a financial decision. He did not know she had already reviewed every page. He did not know she was coming because she wanted to look him in the eye before the bank issued a formal notice. And he definitely did not know she would recognize me. Will you be there? Dad asked. Yes. Good. And Daniel? What? Don't talk too much about your little job. We need Elena focused on serious business. I closed my eyes. Understood. After the call, I walked into the hall. Elena looked up. He invited me. I know. I told him I might be late. He thinks you're going to approve the credit line. I told him I would discuss his account after the holiday. He heard what he wanted. That appears to be a family trait. I gave her a look. She smiled. Sorry. Too soon? About 15 years too soon. Thanksgiving morning was gray and cold. I woke before sunrise, ran 3 miles, and stood in my kitchen drinking coffee while the city slowly brightened outside my windows. My apartment was on the top floor of a restored brick building downtown. It was comfortable, quiet, and expensive in a way that did not shout. I had bought it through a trust. My family thought I rented a small place near the bank. On the counter sat 2 folders. One contained the formal bank notice. The other contained a plan I had spent 3 nights preparing. The first folder could end Reed and Sons. The second could save it, but only if Dad told the truth. Only if Ryan accepted responsibility, and only if my mother was protected first. I placed both folders in a plain leather bag, put on a simple navy sweater, dark pants, and an old coat, then drove the blue sedan to my parents' house. I could have taken the newer car in my garage. I could have worn the watch Samuel gave me after North Star crossed its first 100 million in managed assets. I could have arrived with a driver and made the whole street turn its head. But that would have changed the test. I needed to know how my family treated me when they believed I had nothing. The answer came before I reached the front door. Ryan's SUV was parked across 2 spaces in the driveway. My father's silver truck sat near the garage. I stopped at the curb and carried the pie my mother had asked me to bring. Dad opened the door. He looked at me, then passed me at the sedan. You drove that thing here? Happy Thanksgiving. People are going to be arriving. I'll move it if it blocks anyone. It blocks the view. For one strange second, I wanted to laugh. Instead, I handed him the pie. He looked at the bakery box. Store-bought. Yes. Your mother asked for pumpkin. It is pumpkin. He shook his head as if I had failed an exam. Then my mother appeared behind him, pushed past, and hugged me with both arms. You came, she whispered. That made the drive worth it. Inside, the house smelled like roasted turkey, cinnamon, and the furniture polish Mom used whenever guests were coming. The dining room had been arranged like a magazine picture. White plates, gold napkin rings, candles. The heavy serving bowl my grandmother had used every holiday. Ryan stood by the fireplace, telling my uncle about a luxury apartment project near the river. His wife, Megan, wore a cream dress and an expression that said she was tired of pretending. Their daughter, Sophie, 12 years old and far more observant than the adults around her, ran over and hugged me. Uncle Daniel, did you bring the weird puzzle game? It's in the car. Yes. Ryan glanced over. Well, look who made it. He hugged me with one arm and checked my sweater like he was reading a price tag. Still keeping it simple, I see. Still keeping it loud, I see. For half a second, his smile disappeared. Then he laughed and slapped my shoulder. That was how the evening began. The first hour was almost peaceful. I helped Mom in the kitchen. Sophie followed me around asking questions about how credit cards worked, why banks charged interest, and whether rich people were always happy. No, I told her. Sometimes money just makes unhappy people louder. She looked toward the dining room where my father was arguing with the television. That makes sense. Megan heard us and tried not to smile. Ryan spent most of the afternoon on his phone. Every few minutes, he stepped into the hallway to answer a call. When he returned, his voice became brighter, his stories bigger. He talked about projects that had not started, investors who had not signed, and profits that existed only in his imagination. Dad listened like a proud king hearing news from his favorite son. At one point, Dad brought out a bottle of wine and held it up for everyone. $500, he announced. My uncle raised his eyebrows. Dad turned to me. That's probably more than your monthly grocery budget. Probably, I said. He poured me half a glass, as if the wine might be wasted on me. Mom gave me an apologetic look. I had promised myself not to react. I had spent years learning that people like my father used humiliation the way children use sticks to test thin ice. They kept striking until something broke. If I showed anger, he would call me sensitive. If I defended myself, he would call me jealous. If I revealed the truth too soon, he would turn the evening into a fight about my secrecy instead of his behavior. So I waited. At 5:30, we sat down. Elena had not arrived yet. Dad checked the window twice, then his phone. She said 6, Mom reminded him. A serious person arrives early. I almost said that a serious person reads loan documents, but I kept eating. The conversation moved through safe topics. Weather, football, Sophie's school, my aunt's new dog. Then Ryan placed his glass down and announced that R&R Development was close to finalizing the biggest deal in county history. What deal? I asked. Dad looked annoyed. You wouldn't understand. Try me. Ryan leaned back. Riverfront towers, 200 luxury units, retail space, private gym, rooftop lounge. Financing, he smiled, handled. Permits, moving, pre-sales, strong interest. None of those answers meant anything. I looked at Megan. She was staring at her plate. Dad noticed me watching. Don't pick at him, Daniel. Some people actually take risks. That is true. What is that supposed to mean? It means some people take risks. Ryan gave a short laugh. Daniel has always liked safe little jobs. Remember when he refused to join Reed & Sons? He could have been running a crew by now. Dad pointed his fork at me. That was your first big mistake. I nodded slowly. Maybe. It was. You thought you were too smart for us. No. I thought warehouse assistant was an unusual position for someone with an accounting scholarship. Ryan's smile tightened. Dad's face changed. The old anger arrived quickly, like it had been waiting near the surface. I offered you a place in this family business. You offered Ryan a title and me a test. Because Ryan had leadership. And I had what? Attitude. The table went silent. Mom whispered, Tom. He ignored her. You always acted like we were not good enough for you. He continued. Then you ran off, took your little degree. And what did it get you? Look at Ryan. House, cars, projects, a family, and look at you. He waved his hand toward me. I glanced down at my sweater. What exactly am I looking at? A man with no wife, no house, no real business, driving a car worth less than Ryan's tires. Sophie looked uncomfortable. Megan spoke softly. Thomas, maybe not at dinner. Dad laughed. Why not? We are family. Family tells the truth. That sentence almost made me lose control. Family tells the truth. My father had signed my mother's home against a loan and hidden it from her. Ryan had pulled money from the company my grandfather built and used it to support luxury projects while telling everyone he was rich. They were sitting on a collapse and calling it success. But I took a breath. What truth do you want me to tell? I asked. Dad's eyes narrowed. Ryan leaned forward. Here we go. I looked at my father. Do you really want honesty at this table? He smiled. Please. Impress us. Mom said my name quietly, warning me. I could have opened the bag then. I could have placed the bank notice beside the turkey and watched their faces. Instead, I asked a simple question. How is Reed & Sons doing? Dad blinked. Ryan answered too quickly. Great. Cash flow? Strong. Outstanding receivables? Ryan stared at me. Dad frowned. Why are you using bank words? They are business words. Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in it. Did you read a finance article before coming here? I'm asking because Riverfront Towers sounds expensive. It is an investment. With whose money? Dad placed his fork down. That is enough. I turned toward him. You said family tells the truth. And I said enough. There it was. Truth was welcome only when it pointed at me. Dad reached for the gravy, then gave a bitter smile. Move that away from Daniel, he said. The broke one might try to take it home. This time, the room did not laugh. Not really. Ryan made a sound. My uncle looked into his glass. Mom's eyes shone with embarrassment. I felt something inside me settle. Not break. Settle. For years, part of me had carried a foolish hope that one day my father would ask what I had built, that he would listen long enough to understand, that he would see me without needing me to stand below Ryan. In that moment, the hope left, and strangely, I felt lighter. Then the doorbell rang. Dad stood so quickly his chair scraped the floor. That will be Elena. He adjusted his shirt, smoothed his hair, and looked around the room. Everyone, please, this is important. He looked directly at me. Daniel, let Ryan do the talking. I folded my hands on the table. Of course. Dad walked toward the front hall with Ryan close behind him. We heard the door open. Cold air moved through the house. Elena apologized for being late. Dad's voice became warm and respectful, in a way he had never used with me. Then footsteps approached the dining room. Elena entered wearing a dark green coat and carrying a slim black folder. She greeted my mother, nodded to the family, then saw me at the far end of the table. She stopped. Her expression shifted from polite focus to genuine surprise. Daniel? My father smiled uncertainly. You two know each other? Elena looked from him to me. Then she said the words that changed the entire room. Of course we do. Mr. Reed is chairman of North Star Holdings. No one moved. Elena removed her coat, still watching me. And technically, she added, he's my boss. The silence after that was so complete I could hear the small clock above the fireplace. My father's smile remained on his face, but it no longer belonged there. Ryan looked at Elena, then at me, then back at Elena. My mother's lips parted. Sophie was the first person to speak. I knew Uncle Daniel wasn't boring. It was such a perfect sentence that Megan covered her mouth. I stood and pulled out the empty chair beside Mom. Elena, please sit. She did. Dad stayed standing. I'm sorry, he said. Chairman of what? North Star Holdings, Elena replied. He waited for more. She gave it to him. North Star owns a controlling interest in Harbor County Trust, along with several financial and business service companies. Ryan's face slowly lost color. Dad looked at me. You own the bank? Not personally, I said. A holding company I founded controls it. How much? Dad, Mom whispered. No, Linda, I want to understand. He stared at Elena. How much of the bank? Enough that Daniel appoints the board, she said. His chair was still empty behind him. He reached for it and sat down carefully. Ryan laughed once, sharply. This is a joke. Elena did not react. Ryan turned to me. You own a bank? I help oversee a group that owns part of one. Why didn't you tell anyone? I looked at him. When did you ask? That answer hit harder than I expected. Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it. Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it. Dad leaned forward. You have been sitting here letting us think you were struggling. I never said I was struggling. You drove that car. It works. You wear clothes like that. I looked at my sweater again. It is a sweater. You let me call you. He stopped. The broke one? I asked. Mom closed her eyes. Dad's face flushed. I was joking. No, I said quietly. You were measuring. He looked away. Elena placed the black folder beside her plate. The movement brought everyone's attention back to the reason she was there. Dad noticed it too. He straightened. Well, he said, forcing a laugh, this is incredible. Daniel, you should have told us. We could have done business together years ago. The speed of the change made my stomach turn. 10 seconds earlier, I had been the family disappointment. Now I was an opportunity. Ryan recovered quickly. Exactly, he said. This is actually perfect. North Star could support riverfront towers. We keep it in the family. I looked at him. You want me to invest? He spread his hands. Why not? It is a strong project. Show me the numbers. His smile weakened. Tonight? You brought it up tonight. Dad jumped in. We do not need to turn Thanksgiving into a board meeting. Elena glanced at the folder. It already is one, she said. Dad looked at her. She opened the folder and removed a document. Thomas, I told you I was coming because we needed to discuss your account before Monday. Mom's hand froze near her glass. Dad forced a calm expression. Yes. The credit line. No. One word. Simple. Final. Elena continued. The bank cannot approve additional credit under the current conditions. Ryan leaned forward. Current conditions? Your company's debt level, delayed receivables, transfer activity, and collateral exposure. Dad's voice hardened. This is not the place. You asked me to come here, Elena reminded him. I asked you as a guest. You invited the president of your bank while requesting emergency funding. My uncle looked down at his plate as if he wanted to disappear. Dad turned to me. You knew about this. Yes. The betrayal in his face was almost convincing. You came into my house knowing the bank was going to deny us? I came into Mom's house knowing you had placed it at risk. Mom turned toward him. What does that mean? Dad said nothing. Ryan moved first. It is not what it sounds like. Megan looked at him. Then explain what it sounds like. He ignored her. Mom's voice became firmer. Tom, what did Daniel mean? Dad rubbed his forehead. It was temporary. What was temporary? The house was listed as support for a company loan. She stared at him. You used our home? It is not used, it is security. That means used. I was going to tell you. When? He had no answer. Mom stood. Her chair pushed backward, and for a moment I thought she would leave the room. Instead, she placed both hands on the table to steady herself. You asked me to sign papers. Dad looked embarrassed now, not sorry. It would have improved the terms. You told me it was routine. It is complicated. No, she said. You made it complicated so I would stop asking. I had never heard my mother speak to him that way. Dad glanced around the table, aware that everyone was watching. This is a business matter. Linda, sit down. She did not. Elena spoke carefully. Mrs. Reed, the bank has not accepted any new signature from you. No additional lien has been added with your consent. Mom looked at her. But the house is already connected? Yes. Through a prior guarantee signed by your husband. Dad's eyes flashed at Elena. She did not look away. Ryan pushed his plate aside. Fine. We need time. Approve the bridge line. We finish the riverfront deal, and everything gets repaid. I turned to him. How much money does R&R have available right now? That is private. The bank has your records. He swallowed. I continued. How much? Dad snapped. Daniel, stop. But Mom looked at Ryan. How much? Ryan's confidence cracked. Cash is tight, because we are in a growth stage. How much? Megan asked. He looked at her with irritation. Not now. Now, she said. He said nothing. Elena opened a second page. As of Wednesday, R&R Development had just under $43,000 in available cash, and more than $600,000 in payments, due within 30 days. Megan went pale. Ryan looked furious. You cannot share that. You signed cross guarantees tying R&R to Reed & Sons, Elena said. Everyone at this table whose property is connected to those guarantees deserves clarity. He pointed at me. This is him. He is doing this. This is revenge because Dad chose me. There it was. Not regret. Not fear for his wife or daughter. Fear of losing his position. I looked at Ryan across the table. I did not transfer money from Reed & Sons into R&R. You are using the bank against us. I did not sign Mom's home. You wanted us to fail. No, I said. I wanted you to stop pretending you were winning. Dad stood again. That is enough. Elena, thank you for coming. We will meet Monday with our attorneys. Elena did not move. You may want to hear Daniel's proposal first. Dad stared at me. What proposal? I reached down and placed my leather bag on the table. Then I removed 2 folders. One black, one white. The black folder contains what happens if the bank follows the standard process, I said. The white folder contains a restructuring plan that could keep Reed & Sons operating, protect most jobs, and remove Mom's house from the company debt. Everyone looked at the folders. Ryan's eyes locked on the white one. Dad's eyes stayed on me. What do you want? He asked. It was the first honest question he had asked me all night. I answered just as honestly. The truth. Dad laughed, but the sound was empty. You drag a bank president into Thanksgiving dinner, reveal some secret empire, and now you want truth? I did not invite her. You let this happen. I let you speak. His jaw tightened. That was the part he hated most. No one had forced him to insult me. No one had forced Ryan to brag. No one had forced either of them to hide the company's condition from Mom. I had only sat at the table and allowed their choices to become visible. I slid the black folder toward Dad. If you choose this, the bank issues default notice Monday morning. Accounts are restricted. The company enters formal review. Non-essential assets are sold. Personal guarantees are examined. The process will be public within days. Dad did not touch it. I slid the white folder beside it. If you choose this, North Star purchases the troubled debt at a negotiated value. Reed & Sons enters a 12-month recovery plan. An independent finance officer takes control of spending. Ryan leaves management immediately. R&R development is separated and liquidated. Mom's home is released from future business guarantees. The company keeps operating under professional oversight. Ryan shot to his feet. You cannot remove me from my own company. R&R is your company. Reed & Sons is Dad's. It has my name in it. It has both our names in it, I said. You just forgot the second son existed. His face twisted. Dad opened the white folder and scanned the first page. This gives North Star an option to buy 51%. Yes. You want to steal my company. No. I am offering to save a company worth less than its debt. It is worth millions. Then the black folder should not worry you. He glared at me. I felt no joy. That surprised me. For years, I had imagined what it would feel like to stand above him. In those fantasies, I was calm and powerful. He was shocked. Ryan was silent. Everyone finally understood. But real life was heavier. My mother was standing beside a cold plate of food, learning that her home had been gambled without her knowledge. Megan was realizing her husband had lied about their money. Sophie was watching the adults she trusted become strangers. Winning did not feel like winning. It felt like opening a wall and finding rot. Mom sat down slowly. Daniel, she said, can the company really be saved? Yes. Will people lose their jobs? Some senior positions may change. Most crews can stay. The projects that still make sense can continue. She looked at Dad. And the house, protected under the white plan. Dad turned a page. You already prepared all this. I started when I saw the records. So you have been investigating us. The bank reviewed a borrower. You are my son. And I am responsible for hundreds of employees and depositors. He slapped the folder closed. Do not lecture me about responsibility. Mom looked at him in disbelief. I leaned back. Okay. That one word made him angrier. You think because you made money you are better than me? No. You think you can walk in here and take everything I built? No. Then what do you think? The whole room waited. I looked at the man who had spent years defining me before I could define myself. I think you are afraid. His face went still. I continued. You are afraid the company is failing. You are afraid Ryan is not who you told everyone he was. You are afraid Mom will see what you did. And you are afraid that the son you dismissed understands your business better than you do. Dad's eyes burned. Ryan moved around the table. Say one more thing about me. Megan stood between us. "Sit down, Ryan." He stared at her. She did not move. That was another shift. Small, but real. Ryan looked around the room and realized no one was automatically on his side. He sat. Dad opened the white folder again. "What does independent review of transfers mean?" "It means every payment from Reed & Sons to R&R will be examined." Ryan looked at me sharply. "For what?" "For whether the payments were legitimate." "They were." "Then the review will show that. And if you decide they were not, it is not my decision. An outside firm will review them." He laughed bitterly. "You expect me to trust your outside firm?" "No. That is why your attorney can approve the firm." Dad rubbed his thumb along the edge of the folder. He was thinking now. Not about right and wrong. About survival. What happens to Ryan if the transfers were not legitimate? Elena answered before I could. That depends on what the review finds, and how the company chooses to recover the money. Ryan stared at Dad. "You are not considering this." Dad did not answer. "Dad." Still nothing. Ryan pushed away from the table. "I gave everything to that company." I almost laughed. He had been given everything by that company. The title, the office, the truck, the contacts, the credit, the reputation built by our grandfather and carried by our father's crews. But this was not the moment to say it. Megan spoke instead. "No, Ryan, you took everything from it." He turned toward her. "What did you say?" Her voice shook, but she kept going. "The house we live in, the cars, the trips, that development office. You told me the money came from investors." "It did." "Which investors?" He did not answer. She nodded slowly, tears filling her eyes. "That is what I thought." Sophie left her chair and stood beside her mother. Ryan looked at his daughter, and something in his face changed. Not enough, but something. Dad closed the folder. "No decisions tonight," he said. "The bank needs one before Monday," Elena replied. "Then we will decide Sunday." "That is acceptable." Dad looked at me. "You will leave these copies." His mouth tightened at the word. Of course they were copies. He hated that too. Dinner ended without dessert. My aunt and uncle left quickly. Elena stayed long enough to explain the basic timeline, then put on her coat. At the door, she spoke to me quietly. "You handled that better than I expected." "That sounds like an insult." "It is a compliment with history." She looked toward the dining room. "Be careful. Shame makes people unpredictable." "I know." "Do you?" I followed her gaze. Dad stood near the fireplace, staring at the white folder. Ryan was in the hallway on his phone. Mom was speaking softly to Megan. "I know enough," I said. Elena nodded and left. Outside, cold rain had started. I walked to my sedan alone, but before I reached it, Dad called my name. He stood on the porch without a coat. For a second, he looked older than he had at the table. "Were you ever going to tell me?" he asked. "About North Star?" "Yes." I tried. He frowned. "When?" 3 years ago. You called while I was signing our first bank acquisition. I said I had big news." His eyes shifted. I remembered the call perfectly. He had interrupted me to say Ryan had been named Businessman of the Year by the county chamber. Then he told me he had to go. "You could have called again," he said. I looked at him through the rain. "So could you." Then I got into my car and drove away. I did not go home. I drove downtown, parked beneath the North Star building, and took the elevator to the top floor. The office was dark except for emergency lights and the glow from the city outside. I sat in the conference room where we usually reviewed acquisitions, and opened the Reed & Sons file again. People imagine revenge as a hot feeling, fire, rage, a sudden decision. The dangerous kind is colder. It is the feeling that tells you to become exact. For years, I had wanted my father to regret underestimating me. Now, I had the power to make that regret permanent. I could deny the restructuring. I could let the bank take the company. I could purchase the construction yard later, for less than half its value. I could remove the Reed name, and turn the land into something profitable. Every step would be legal. Every step would also prove him right about one thing. That success had made me just like him. I stared at my grandfather's photo on the wall. He had started Reed and Sons with one truck and a borrowed mixer. He was not perfect. He had a temper and a stubborn streak. But he knew every crew member's name. When a worker's child got sick, he paid the family's rent for 2 months and never told anyone. He believed a company was not a trophy, it was a promise. Dad had inherited that promise. Ryan had treated it like an account. I wanted to save the business, but I needed to know whether I was saving it for the right reason. At midnight, I called Samuel Hart. He answered on the 4th ring. "Someone better be losing a bank," he said. "Maybe a construction company." He listened while I explained Thanksgiving. When I finished, he was quiet. "What do you want me to tell you?" he asked. "That the White plan is fair." "It is." "That I'm not doing it for revenge." "You are." I leaned back. "Thanks. You are welcome." I was hoping for comfort. "Call a pillow." I smiled despite myself. Samuel continued. "Revenge does not automatically make a decision wrong. The question is whether revenge is driving the car or sitting in the back seat making noise. And what do you think? I think you built the second folder. That stayed with me. If I truly wanted destruction, there would have been only one folder. I went home at 2 in the morning. Mom called at 7. Her voice was tired. "Your father did not sleep. Did you?" "No." "Are you safe?" "Yes. He is angry, not dangerous." "Good." She paused. "Daniel, why didn't you tell me?" The question hurt because she had earned a better answer than Dad. "I wanted to, but you didn't. I was afraid it would reach him, and then every conversation would become about money. Our conversations were never about money." "I know. Then you should have trusted me." She was right. I sat on the edge of my bed. "I'm sorry." She cried quietly for a moment. Not because I was rich, because I had built a life and kept her outside it. "I thought you were lonely," she said. "I worried you were working too hard because you had nothing else." "I was working too hard." "Were you lonely?" Sometimes the simplest questions were the hardest. "Yes." "Why didn't you come home more?" I looked at the dark window. Because home did not feel like a place where I could arrive as myself. She did not defend Dad. That told me everything. After a while, she said, "I want to see where you work. Anytime. And your apartment." "Yes. And I want you to tell me things even if your father does not listen." "I will." She took a breath. "Ryan left last night. Megan and Sophie stayed here." "Where did he go?" "I do not know." I knew where to start. North Star had security alerts on several R&R accounts because of the pending review. At 8:20, Marcus called. "We have movement," he said. Ryan attempted 3 transfers before dawn. "How much?" "Just over 300,000. From Reed and Sons? 1 from a project reserve account. 2 from R&R accounts tied to guarantees. Were they completed?" The system held them for review. I closed my eyes. Ryan had been given 1 night to decide whether to face the truth. He had chosen to run with the money. "Notify Elena," I said. "Lock all non-routine transfers under the loan agreement. Preserve the records." "Done." "And Marcus?" "Yes. Keep my name out of the instruction chain. Follow standard policy." He understood. At 9, Ryan called me. I let it ring twice. Then I answered. "You froze my accounts. The bank placed review holds. You did it." "I did not personally press a button, if that is what you are asking." "Release them." "No." His breathing was heavy. "That money is mine. Some of it belongs to Reed and Sons. It was transferred legally. Then the review will confirm it. I need it today." "For what?" He hesitated. That was the wrong response. "Ryan, I have obligations." "What kind?" "Personal." "How much do you owe outside the bank?" Silence. "Ryan, how much?" "Stay out of my life. You tied your life to company accounts." He swore under his breath, then caught himself. "You always hated me." "No. You did. I hated being compared to you. That is different. You think you are better now." "No, I think you are in trouble." He laughed bitterly. "You love this." I thought I would. That stopped him. I continued. But I do not love what this is doing to Mom. Or Megan. Or Sophie. His voice lowered. Do not bring them into it. You brought them into it when you used the family home and your daughter's future as background pieces in a story about your success. You do not know anything. Then tell me. For a moment, I thought he might. I heard a car horn in the distance, then wind. Finally, he said, Meet me. Where? The old construction yard. What time? 11. Are you alone? Does it matter? Yes. He hung up. I texted Elena the location and told her I was going. She called immediately. This is not a movie, she said. I know. Then do not meet an angry borrower alone in an empty yard. He is my brother. That sentence has never made anyone safer. I agreed to bring Marcus, but asked him to wait in the car. At 10:50, I drove through the gates of the old Reed & Sons yard. The place held most of my childhood memories. Stacks of lumber, yellow machines, the smell of oil and wet concrete, Granddad teaching me how to read measurements, Ryan daring me to climb equipment we were forbidden to touch. Now half the yard was empty. Several machines had been sold. The main office windows were dark. Ryan stood near the original blue truck, the one from Granddad's photo. It had not run in years, but Dad refused to remove it. I got out. Ryan looked at my sedan and laughed without humor. You really drive that thing? Yes. Why? Because no one follows it. He stared at me. Is that how you see us? People you have to hide from? Sometimes. His eyes looked tired. His jacket was unzipped despite the cold. He held a folder in one hand. What is that? I asked. He tossed it onto the hood of the old truck. Riverfront records. I opened it. Private loan agreements, investor notes, personal guarantees. Then I saw a name I recognized. Victor Hale. Samuel had warned me about Hale years earlier. He financed risky developments through private contracts designed to take control when borrowers failed. He stayed close to the law without ever feeling clean. How much do you owe him? I asked. Ryan looked away. 2.4 million? He laughed once. No, Daniel. 2.4 sandwiches. My stomach tightened. When is it due? Technically last week. What happens now? He takes the project rights. Then he comes after the guarantees, which include. Ryan looked at the ground. My house, some R&R shares, and a personal claim. Did Dad sign anything with Hale? No. Are you sure? Yes. Did you forge anything? His head snapped up. No. Did you move Reed & Sons money to make payments to him? He did not answer. That was enough. I closed the folder. Why did you try to transfer $300,000 this morning? To buy time. It would not buy time. It would prove the transfers were intentional. I had no choice. There is always a choice. He looked at me with sudden anger. That is easy for you to say. You always knew what you wanted. You left. You built your perfect secret life. I stayed here. You were given the company. I was trapped in it. The words surprised me. Ryan stepped closer to the truck. Dad decided who I was. Before I finished high school, I was the leader, the future, the son who could not fail. Every deal had to be bigger, because he told everyone I was bigger. Every mistake had to be hidden, because you were gone, and I was all he had left to prove he had raised a winner. You could have said no. To him, yes. Ryan shook his head. You said no because you were already the disappointment. What could he take from you? I had everything he gave me. The title, the house, his respect. Every year it became more expensive to keep. I wanted to reject his excuse. Part of me still does. But standing in that cold yard, I saw something I had missed. Dad's favoritism had hurt both of us. He had made me believe I was worth less. He had made Ryan believe he could never afford to be less. The difference was that I had escaped the role. Ryan had started stealing to protect his. That does not excuse what you did, I said. I know. It was the first time he had said anything honest. What do you want from me? He looked at the folder. Help me get out. By releasing the money? No. I waited. By making sure Sophie does not lose everything, because I was too weak to tell the truth. I told Ryan there would be conditions. Full disclosure. Every account, every agreement, every transfer. He would resign from Reed & Sons before the bank issued its final decision. He would cooperate with the independent review. He would not contact company clients or employees without approval. He would tell Megan everything himself, and he would accept that I could not protect him from every consequence. He listened without interrupting. Then he asked, "Will I go to prison?" The question hung in the cold air. "I do not know," I said. "That depends on what happened, what can be repaid, and what the review finds." He nodded. "Will Dad lose the company? Maybe control of it?" "He will hate you. He already does when I disagree with him." Ryan looked at me for a long time. "No," he said, "he does not hate you. You have a strange way of showing comfort. He is afraid of you. That is not better. It is to him." Marcus stepped out of the car in the distance, checking whether I was safe. I raised one hand. Ryan noticed him. "You brought security?" "I brought an accountant. That may be worse." For the first time that morning, we both smiled. It lasted only a second. Ryan handed me the full folder. "There is more in my office. Do not touch it. We will collect it with witnesses." He nodded. "Can I see Megan?" "That is not my decision." "Sophie?" "Also not my decision." He looked toward the empty yard. "I really ruined this." "Yes." He flinched. I could have softened it. I did not. Truth is not cruelty when lies have become dangerous. We left separately. By noon, Elena had arranged for outside counsel and forensic accountants. By 1, Dad knew Ryan had resigned. He called me 11 times. I answered the 12th. "What did you do to your brother?" "I met him. He came to me and said he is leaving the company. That is his choice. You forced him." "No. You have wanted his position your whole life." I stood by my office window, looking down at the street. "I never wanted his position. You were jealous. I wanted your respect. That is not the same thing." Silence. Then Dad said, "Come here." "Where?" "My house." "No." His voice rose. "I am your father, and I am working. On destroying us. On preventing a complete collapse." He breathed heavily. "If Ryan is out, who runs the company?" "An interim manager. Chosen by you. Chosen by the restructuring team, with your input. My input. Yes. This is my company. Then choose the black folder." He went quiet. I hated using that line, but it was true. "Sunday," he said. "We meet Sunday at 3. Bank conference room. You, Mom, your attorney, Elena, me, and the restructuring team. Not my house?" "No." "Why?" "Because this is business." He hung up. The rest of Friday became a storm of records. Ryan had told the truth about one thing. There was more. A lot more. R&R Development had 12 active projects, but only 3 had real potential. The rest were held together by new debt. Ryan had used Reed & Sons equipment at low rates, shifted labor costs between companies, and approved consulting payments to a firm controlled by one of his friends. He had not taken all the money for himself. In some ways, that made it more tragic. He had used most of it to cover earlier mistakes. One bad deal became 2. 2 became 5. Every new project was supposed to rescue the last. He kept believing the next success would erase the previous failure. That is how people fall deepest. Not because they stop believing. Because they keep believing in the wrong thing. On Friday evening, Megan called. I expected anger. Instead, she asked, "Is Sophie's college account safe?" "Yes, it was separate." She exhaled. "And the house?" "That depends on Ryan's private agreement with Hale. We are reviewing it." He told me. "Everything?" "He says everything. That is a start." She was silent for a moment. "Did you know he was unhappy?" "Yes. I did too." "Then why didn't either of us say anything?" She gave a tired laugh. "Because your family punishes people who say the quiet part out loud." That was painfully accurate. "He always needed to look successful," she continued. At first I thought it was confidence. Then I realized he could not sit in a normal restaurant without checking whether someone important was watching. He could not buy a car because he liked it. He had to buy one your father would brag about. Why did you stay? Because he is not only the worst thing he has done. I thought about that. It was a sentence my mother might have said about Dad. Megan continued. But I will not help him lie anymore. Good. Do not mistake that for me helping you hurt him. I don't want to hurt him. Maybe not now. Her words were calm. But part of you did. Yes. Thank you for being honest. After the call, I found Elena in the main conference room. She had taken off her shoes and was sitting cross-legged in a chair, reading transfer reports. You look comfortable, I said. I have worked here longer than the furniture. I sat across from her. Ryan is cooperating. For now. Do you think the white plan still works? She set down the report. The company is weaker than we thought. How weak? If the city payment arrives within 30 days, salvageable. If it does not, we need deeper cuts. And Hale? His contracts are aggressive, not impossible. What is the cleanest option? North Star buys the bank debt. We separate viable Reed & Sons projects, sell unused equipment, settle valid R&R claims, and negotiate Hale out of the riverfront rights. At what cost? More than the company is worth today. Then the investment committee will reject it. Unless there is strategic value. I knew what she meant. Reed & Sons held city licenses, skilled crews, and long-standing contracts. North Star had recently invested in affordable housing developments across the region. A repaired construction company could become useful. But I also knew how it would look. The founder saving his family. Would you approve it if my name were not Reed? I asked. Elena thought for a moment. With the right manager and the riverfront project removed, yes. Then take it to committee without me. You are chairman. I will disclose the conflict and abstain. She nodded. That is the correct answer. Was there a test? There is always a test. Saturday morning, the story leaked. A local business reporter posted that Reed & Sons Construction was facing financial pressure and that Ryan Reed had stepped away from management. The article did not mention the bank notice, but it was enough. Dad called the report a lie. Ryan did not answer reporters. Employees began calling supervisors. Suppliers demanded updates. By noon, a photo of Ryan entering North Star's office appeared online. The comments were cruel. People who had praised him at charity dinners now called him a fraud. People who knew nothing about the facts invented new ones. I watched the public story grow, and I understood why Ryan had been so afraid. The world loved success, but it loved exposed success even more. At 2, Dad arrived at North Star without an appointment. Security called me. He says he is your father. He is. He says that means he does not need a badge. It means he definitely needs a badge. 5 minutes later, he walked into my office. He stopped just inside the door. The space was not huge, but it was clear. Glass walls, city view, conference table, the North Star logo behind my desk. On the shelf, awards with my name. Dad read one. Then another. Regional Financial Innovator of the Year. Community Business Recovery Award. Founders Leadership Medal. His face changed with each line. Not pride. Calculation. How long? He asked. North Star started 9 years ago. You were 23. Yes. That was when you left Harbor County Trust. Yes. He walked toward the window. All this time, you let Ryan and me make fools of ourselves. I stood. You did not need my help. He turned. You enjoyed it. Sometimes. He looked surprised by the answer. I continued. Sometimes I enjoyed knowing I had something you could not take credit for. Sometimes I liked arriving in that old car and watching you decide what I was worth. It reminded me why I left. His eyes moved to the photograph of Granddad. You put him here. He believed in quiet work. He believed in the company. He believed in people. Dad looked away. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he said, Save Reed & Sons. Not please. Not can you. Save it. I almost refused because of the way he said it. Then I remembered the crews, the families, my mother. I am trying. Without Ryan? Yes. He made mistakes. He moved company money. He was under pressure. So was I. Dad's expression hardened. This is not about you. I laughed softly. That may be the first true thing you have said all week. He stepped closer. You want an apology? I used to. What do you want now? Accountability. That word again. Yes. He shook his head. Business does not run on feelings. No. It runs on cash, trust, and decisions. You are short on all three. His face reddened, but he controlled himself. Sunday at 3, I said. Bring your lawyer, bring every document, and do not ask Mom to sign anything. He walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned back. Your grandfather would not have taken control from me. I looked at his photograph. No, I said. He would have expected you not to lose it. Sunday's meeting lasted 5 hours. Dad arrived with his attorney, Charles Benton, a careful man who had represented Reed & Sons for 2 decades. Mom came in a separate car with Megan. Ryan arrived alone and sat at the far end of the table. Elena led the meeting because I had formally disclosed my conflict and stepped out of the bank's decision. That did not stop Dad from looking at me every time he disliked an answer. The facts were worse when spoken aloud. Reed & Sons owed $9 million across secured loans, equipment notes, supplier balances, and project obligations. R&R Development owed another $6.3 million, not including private claims. Some debt could be covered by assets. Some could not. The company's survival depended on 3 things. The city had to release a delayed payment. Suppliers had to accept longer terms. And North Star's investment committee had to approve the restructuring. Dad listened with his arms crossed. When the outside accountant described transfers from Reed & Sons to R&R, Ryan admitted approving them. Dad interrupted. I approved intercompany support. You approved some, Ryan said. The room changed. Dad turned toward him. What does that mean? Ryan looked down at his hands. Some transfers were above the amounts we discussed. How much above? Ryan told him. Dad stood so quickly his chair hit the wall. You stole from me. Ryan's face tightened. I was trying to protect the projects. You stole from my company. You signed half the checks. Because you lied about what they were for. And you lied to Mom about the house. Dad went silent. Ryan continued. Years of anger finally breaking through. You taught me this. Every problem was about appearance. Never tell the crews we were short. Never tell the bank we missed the estimate. Never tell investors the permit was delayed. Smile, shake hands, buy dinner, and move the money until the next check arrives. I taught you to fight. No, you taught me to hide. Dad crossed the room as if he might grab him, but Charles stepped between them. Thomas, sit down. I built everything for him. Ryan laughed in disbelief. You built me for you. No one spoke. I looked at Mom. Tears moved down her face, but she did not look away. This was the truth I had asked for. It was uglier than I expected. After a long pause, Elena continued the meeting. The White Plan required Dad to give up operational control for at least 12 months. He could remain as a senior advisor. He would receive a salary, but no authority over spending. The company would be renamed Reed Construction Group, removing & Sons, until ownership and management were settled. Dad hated every word. What about Daniel? He asked. Does he run it? No, Elena said. Why not? I almost laughed at the change. 3 days earlier, Dad believed I could not run anything. Now he wanted me to repair everything. I chair North Star, I said. I will not manage the construction company. Then who? We presented 3 candidates. Dad rejected all 3. Too young. Too corporate. Not local. Finally, I slid a 4th name across the table. Carla Mendoza. She had worked at Reed & Sons for 26 years. She started as a site coordinator, became operations director, and had warned Dad twice about R&R's billing. Ryan had pushed her out 6 months earlier after she refused to approve equipment transfers without records. Dad stared at the page. She quit. She was forced out, Ryan said. Dad ignored him. She does not understand finance. She understands the company, I replied. Elena's team handles financial controls. Carla handles operations. Dad leaned back. She will never return. She already agreed to consider it. His eyes lifted. You spoke to her? Yes. Behind my back. You removed her without a board process. It was my decision. And this is the result. He looked ready to walk out. Mom spoke for the first time in nearly an hour. Tom, if you choose the black folder, I am filing for legal separation before the bank can touch anything else. Dad turned toward her. The air left the room. What? I will not lose my home because you are too proud to accept help. We have been married 38 years, and you signed my life into a loan without telling me. I did it for the family. No, you did it for the company. And lately, I do not think you know the difference. Dad sat slowly. He looked around the table. His son who had failed him. His son who had surpassed him. His wife who had stopped protecting him. The bank president who controlled his future. The lawyer who could not argue with the numbers. For the first time in my life, my father had no one left to perform for. What happens to my shares? He asked. Elena answered. North Star receives an option for 51% if performance targets are missed. If targets are met, the company can remain majority family-owned. Dad looked at me. You could own it. North Star could. You are North Star. No, I founded it. That does not make every asset mine. He did not understand that distinction. Maybe he never would. Ryan signed his resignation first. His hand shook. Then he signed the cooperation agreement. Megan watched from across the room. She did not smile, but she nodded once. Dad waited another 40 minutes. He reread every page. He argued over language. He demanded changes. Some were reasonable. Most were pride-wearing glasses. Finally, at 8:12 Sunday night, he signed. The black folder remained closed. The white folder became the plan. I thought that would be the climax. I was wrong. At 8:15 Monday morning, Victor Hale filed a claim against R&R Development, Riverfront Towers, and Ryan personally. By 9, he had sent legal notices to Reed & Sons suppliers, suggesting that company assets might be connected to his claim. It was a pressure move. And it worked. 3 suppliers froze deliveries. 2 crews stopped work. The city payment was delayed again. At 10:30, North Star's investment committee voted on the restructuring. 4 in favor. 4 against. I had abstained because of the conflict. The deciding vote belonged to Samuel Hart. He called me before casting it. You know what happens if I vote no, he said. Yes. The bank begins recovery. Reed & Sons probably survives only as a smaller company after asset sales. Yes. If I vote yes, North Star risks 8 figures on a family business, with damaged controls and terrible publicity. Yes. You are not making this sales pitch easy. I am not allowed to make it. You are allowed to answer one question. What question? Why should we save it? I looked through the conference room glass. Employees moved between offices carrying files. Phones rang. Elena stood with the legal team. Outside, rain hit the windows. Because the crews are good, I said. Because the contracts are real. Because the company's failures came from leadership, not capability. Because Carla can run operations. Because affordable housing projects need reliable builders. And because if we only invest in companies with clean histories, we are not a recovery firm. We are a reward firm. Samuel was quiet. That was almost a sales pitch. Sorry. No, you are not. He hung up. 5 minutes later, the vote appeared on screen. 5 in favor, 4 against. The plan was approved, but Hale was still coming. And Hale did not care about our family. He cared about leverage. Victor Hale requested a meeting that afternoon. He arrived at North Star wearing a gray suit, a red tie, and the relaxed smile of a man who made money from other people's panic. He was in his late 50s, thin, controlled, and perfectly polite. I disliked him immediately. He came with 2 attorneys. We came with 4. Elena sat beside me. Marcus and the outside counsel took the other side of the table. Ryan was not invited. Hale placed one leather folder in front of him. "Mr. Reed," he said, "I have heard a great deal about you. I have read a great deal about you." He smiled. "Then we can skip introductions." He explained his position. Ryan had missed payment. The riverfront development rights were now subject to transfer. Hale also claimed R&R had used equipment and labor connected to Reed & Sons, which gave him reason to examine whether the companies were truly separate. He did not say he could take Reed & Sons. He wanted us to fear that he might try. "What do you want?" I asked. "Simple resolution. North Star purchases my position at full value, including fees." He named a number. 4.1 million. I almost laughed. "The principal is 2.4. Time has value. So does reality." His smile remained. "I understand North Star wants Reed & Sons for a housing strategy." I gave no reaction. He continued. "Delays are expensive. Public claims are more expensive. You can pay me today, or spend months proving where one company ends and another begins." Elena spoke. "Your contracts are with R&R and Ryan Reed. Companies are stories written in records. The records may tell a broader story." I leaned forward. "Let me tell you what the records say. They say you extended private loans to an undercapitalized developer after receiving project forecasts no bank would accept. They say your fees increased every 30 days. They say your repayment structure made default more profitable than success. And they say you encouraged new borrowing even after you knew R&R was using related company support." For the first time, his smile narrowed. "You are making serious claims." "No, I am reading serious emails." I opened a folder. Ryan had given us access to every message. Among them were emails from Hale's associate suggesting how R&R could categorize certain transfers to avoid unnecessary concern from the bank. Hale's attorney reached for the pages. I kept my hand on them. "Copies will be provided through counsel." Hale looked at me. "What do you want?" "Simple resolution." I used his words. "North Star purchases the valid principal at a discount reflecting project risk. You release all claims connected to Reed & Sons. You keep a small participation if Riverfront is ever completed. And you sign a confidentiality agreement covering this dispute." He leaned back. "Why would I do that?" "Because if you do not, the bank review expands. The independent accountants send every questionable communication to regulators. R&R enters formal insolvency. Your claim becomes one of many, and your business practices become part of a public record." The room went silent. Hale studied me. "This is personal for you." "Yes." "That makes you weak." "No, it makes me patient." He looked toward Elena. She gave him nothing. After 40 minutes, he left without agreement. But he did not file anything new. The next morning, his attorneys called. By Wednesday, we settled for 2.6 million, plus a limited future participation. Not cheap, not perfect. But Reed & Sons was separated from the claim. Ryan lost R&R. The Riverfront project was placed under a new partnership controlled by North Star and outside investors. Most of Ryan's personal stake disappeared. His house was sold 6 months later as part of the settlement. He and Megan moved into a smaller rental near Sophie's school. People assumed that was the revenge. They thought I had taken my brother's projects, stripped his title, and forced him out. But they did not understand what happened next. Real revenge would have left Ryan exactly where his worst choices had placed him. Justice required something harder. Work. For the next 3 months, Ryan cooperated with every review. He returned company property. He sold 2 cars. He liquidated investments. He gave up the membership at the private club Dad loved. He attended financial counseling. He started therapy after Megan made it a condition of staying in the marriage. The outside review found serious misconduct, but not a clean story of theft. Most transfers had been recorded, though badly labeled and hidden from proper oversight. Some were approved by Dad, some were not. Several payments to Ryan's friend were improper, and the money had to be recovered. There were possible legal consequences, but cooperation and repayment mattered. Ryan agreed to a civil settlement. He gave up any claim to management at Reed Construction Group for 5 years. He also accepted a job. Not at North Star. Not at Reed Construction. At a nonprofit business center that helped small contractors learn budgeting, bidding, and debt management. The salary was modest. The office had old furniture. His title was program assistant. When he told Dad, Dad called it humiliating. Ryan took the job anyway. I visited him on his first week. He was sitting at a plain desk helping a plumber understand why a profitable company could still run out of cash. The old Ryan would have been bored. Or embarrassed. This Ryan listened. After the client left, he looked at me. Did you arrange this? I introduced you to the director. So yes. You still had to interview. They asked why I was qualified. What did you say? That I had made every mistake they were trying to prevent. I nodded. That is a strong answer. He leaned back. You like seeing me in a small office? I thought before responding. No. Would you tell me if you did? Yes. He smiled slightly. That is the problem with you now. What? You got everything you wanted. Money, power, the final word. But you are less angry than before. I am still angry. Not enough to make this easy. He was right. Hatred would have been easier. Hatred makes people simple. Love, even damaged love, makes every choice expensive. Reed Construction's recovery was slow. Carla returned as chief operating officer under strict conditions. She demanded full authority over projects and refused to work in the old executive office. That room has too much bad thinking in it, she said. She moved into a smaller office near the dispatch floor. Dad remained as senior advisor. For the first 2 weeks, he tried to give orders. Carla ignored him. For the next 2 weeks, he complained to the board. The board ignored him. Then one morning, a crew supervisor asked Dad for advice about a difficult city inspector. Dad solved the problem in one phone call. Something shifted. Without control, he had to become useful. It was harder for him than losing money. At Thanksgiving dinner, he had been the loudest person in the room. At the company, he now had to wait until someone asked for his opinion. He hated it. Then, slowly, he learned. He started arriving earlier. He spent time with crews. He reviewed old contracts instead of new spending. He stopped wearing the expensive watch after an employee asked whether it had been purchased before or after the delayed bonuses. Mom made him move into the guest room. She did not file for separation immediately, but she hired her own attorney and separated her finances. Dad complained that she no longer trusted him. She answered, correct. It was the simplest boundary she had ever set. As for me, the public story changed quickly. Local news discovered that I had founded North Star. Reporters wanted interviews about the Thanksgiving reveal. Someone at the dinner had shared part of the story, though no one admitted who. The headline practically wrote itself. Local bank owner called broke by his own father. I hated it. North Star's communications team loved it. This is priceless, the director said. It is private. It is already public. Then make it less public. That is not how public works. For 2 weeks, my phone filled with requests. I rejected all of them. Then Sophie called. Uncle Daniel, kids at school keep showing me videos about you. What videos? People telling the story wrong. Of course they were. Are they bothering you? No. But one says Grandpa threw a turkey. He did not. I know. That would have been interesting. I laughed. She became serious. Are you mad at us? At you, never. At the family. Yes. Are you leaving again? The question went straight through me. I do not know. I think you should not. Why? Because if all the honest people leave, the loud people tell the whole story. 12 years old. More wisdom than the Thanksgiving table combined. I agreed to one interview. Not about family drama. About business failure, hidden debt, and the pressure to look successful. The interview went viral anyway. The host asked me why I had hidden my success from my family. I could have given a polished answer. Privacy, security, focus, all true. Instead, I said, because part of me wanted to know whether they could love me without being impressed by me. The studio went quiet. That sentence traveled farther than anything else I said. Millions of people heard it. Thousands wrote to me. Some had parents who compared them to siblings. Some had families who only called when they needed money. Some were the favored child and admitted the pressure had made them dishonest. Some were successful in secret. Others had nothing to hide but still felt unseen. One message came from a 19-year-old student. My dad calls me useless because I study art. I keep thinking I need to become famous before I can go home. Did success fix it? I read the question 3 times. Then I replied. Success changed the volume. It did not heal the wound. Build your life because it is yours, not because you want someone else to regret doubting you. I wish someone had told me that at 19. North Star's public value rose after the interview. New clients called. Investors praised my authenticity. People turned my pain into a leadership brand. That made me uncomfortable. I had spent years hiding from attention, and now attention was rewarding me for explaining why I hid. Samuel found this hilarious. Congratulations, he said. You monetized emotional damage. I did not. North Star signed 12 new clients. That was not the goal. Money rarely asks about the goal. I donated my interview payment and a portion of the new business revenue to the nonprofit where Ryan worked. He accused me of trying to control his job. I did not tell them how to use it, I said. You put my workplace in the spotlight. You help contractors avoid your mistakes. That sentence is going to follow me forever. Only if you keep making it true. He stared at me, then laughed. We were not close. Not yet. But we were learning how to speak without performing the old roles. The hardest person remained Dad. For months, he refused to discuss Thanksgiving. He attended recovery meetings, followed Carla's orders badly, and complained about every restriction. When quarterly results improved, he credited the market. When a project finished under budget, he said it was because of relationships he had built. When North Star's systems caught a billing error, he called it luck. Then Reed Construction lost a bid it had expected to win. Dad blamed Carla. Carla brought him into a conference room and played the recorded presentation. Dad had interrupted twice, dismissed the client's sustainability requirements, and promised a timeline the operations team had warned against. You lost the bid, she said. He looked toward me. I was there as board observer. What do you think? He asked. It was the first time in my life he had asked without already choosing the answer. I think Carla is right. His face hardened. Then, slowly, he nodded. I will call the client. To argue? Carla asked. To apologize. We both stared at him. We both stared at him. The apology did not win the contract back, but it changed something. A week later, Dad invited me to lunch. Not dinner at an expensive restaurant. Lunch at a small diner near the construction yard. He was already sitting in a booth when I arrived. No watch, no suit, just work pants and a faded company jacket. I sat across from him. He pushed a menu toward me. I am paying, he said. I can afford lunch. I know. 2 words. Small words. But he had never said them before. We ordered. He talked about the company for 10 minutes, then stopped. I watched your interview. I waited. You made me sound terrible. I did not mention your name. Everyone knew. Yes. He stirred his coffee. Was it true? What part? That you wanted to know if we could love you without being impressed. Yes. He looked out the window. I was impressed. You did not know. I mean before. I almost interrupted. He continued. You were always the one who noticed things. It made me uncomfortable. When you were 10, you asked why our best crew leader never got invited to management meetings. When you were 14, you told me a supplier was overcharging us. You were right both times. I had forgotten the first memory. I remembered the second. Dad had told me not to speak about things I did not understand. You challenged me, he said. Ryan agreed with me. So you rewarded him. Yes. The honesty hurt more than an excuse. Why? Because agreement felt like respect. It was fear. I know that now. Our food arrived. Neither of us touched it. Dad looked at his hands. When my father started the company, he made every decision. I spent 20 years trying to prove I could lead without him. Then he died before he ever told me I had done well. I saw the line for what it was. Not an excuse. An inheritance. Granddad had been kind to employees and hard on his son. Dad had spent his life chasing approval from a dead man, then trained his own sons to chase him. I thought if Ryan became everything I said he would be, Dad continued, it would prove I had raised him right. And me? He swallowed. You were harder to explain. I felt anger rise. He saw it. I do not mean worse. I mean I could not take credit for you. You chose things I did not understand. You succeeded without asking me. Every year you seemed less connected to what I built. So you made me small. Yes. There was no defense. Just yes. I looked down at the table. For years, I had imagined an apology. In my imagination, it fixed something immediately. The hurt lifted. The past became lighter. Real apologies do not work like that. They open a door. You still have to decide whether to walk through. Dad's voice was low. I am sorry. I looked at him. He did not add if. He did not add but. He did not mention pressure, business, his father, or Ryan. I am sorry I used Ryan to measure you, he said. I am sorry I made home a place you had to defend yourself. And I am sorry I called you broke when I was the one borrowing from everything that mattered. That last sentence almost broke me. I stared through the diner window until my eyes cleared. Then I said, I am not ready to forgive all of it. He nodded. I know, but I believe you mean that. He nodded again. It was not a reunion. It was a beginning. 6 months after the restructuring, Reed Construction posted its first profitable quarter in 2 years. Carla sent the results to the board with a one-line message. Turns out the crews still know how to build when leadership stops digging holes. Dad did not find it funny. Everyone else did. The city payment arrived. Suppliers were repaid. 2 failed projects were closed. 1 old warehouse was sold. The company became smaller, but stronger. North Star did not exercise its option for majority control. Instead, it extended the recovery period under new terms. That decision surprised Dad. You could take it, he said. We could. Why not? Because the targets were met. You trust me again? No. His face fell. I trust the controls. He considered that. Fair. A year after Thanksgiving, we gathered at my parents' house again. The table was smaller. My aunt and uncle came. Megan and Sophie came. Ryan arrived in a used sedan. He made sure everyone saw it, then laughed at himself. Mom cooked. I brought the pie. Store-bought. Pumpkin. Dad did not comment. Elena joined us again, this time as a real guest. Before dinner, Dad stood at the head of the table. For a moment, everyone became tense. Old habits live in the body. He raised his glass. Last year, he said, I thought success meant being the most important person in the room. Ryan looked at me. Dad continued. I was wrong. Success is having people willing to stay in the room after they learn the truth about you. Mom's eyes filled. He looked at Ryan. Some of us made expensive mistakes. Ryan raised his glass. Very expensive. A few people laughed. Then Dad looked at me. And some of us were successful long before we were willing to see it. I held his gaze. He did not call me boss. He did not call me rich. He did not call me the broke one. He called me his son. After dinner, Sophie brought out the weird puzzle game. Ryan complained that the rules were unfair. Megan said he only liked rules when he wrote them. Elena beat all of us in 12 minutes. Later, I stood alone on the porch. The blue sedan was parked at the curb. Dad stepped outside and stood beside me. You are still driving that car. Yes. You know you can buy something safer. It is safe. Something without a dent. The dent has history. He nodded toward it. What happened? Shopping cart. He looked disappointed. I thought it would be dramatic. Not everything is. We stood in silence. Then he said, Thank you for saving the company. I did not save it alone. I know. That mattered too. Inside, everyone laughed at something Sophie had said. Dad opened the door. You coming? I looked at the warm light, the crowded table, the family that had broken itself open and was trying to rebuild without hiding the cracks. Yes, I said, I'm coming.